Hello. Authorities in Sudan have imposed a curfew in two towns after days of ethnic conflict left over 31 people dead and several dozens injured. Soldiers have also been deployed to quell the violence between the Beti and Hausa people in Sudan's southeastern Blue Nile state. The unrest started on Monday with several shops burnt as conflict over land turned violent. Despite the curfews imposed, violence is still reported in several towns. The UN representative in Sudan has called on all sides to seek a peaceful resolution of the crisis. An American missionary has been jailed for 10 years in Georgia, US, for defiling a 14-year-old Ugandan girl under his care. Eris Tuninga was also ordered to pay 20,000 US dollars in restitution to the victim, who hailed from the Eastern District of Bali. Tuninga will also spend a lifetime in a supervised release as a registered sex offender. Tuninga was affiliated with the Orthodox Presbyterian Church in Bali when in 2019, an American citizen contacted the US Embassy in Kampala to report the abuse. Ugandan authorities helped in the investigation. Tuninga pleaded guilty and was jailed until his sentencing this week. In Casablanca, Morocco, Nigeria's female national team, the Super Falcons, have qualified for the 9th Women's World Cup in a row. They defeated Cameroon 1-0 in the quarterfinals. Nigeria, the reigning African champions, will play Morocco, the host, in one of the semi-final games on Monday. South Africa defeated Tunisia 1-0 to secure a return to the Women's World Cup. They will play Zambia on Monday for a spot in the finals. The 2023 Women's World Cup will be played in Australia and New Zealand. Talking of wins, in Nigeria, the opposition party, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has defeated the ruling party, the All Progressive Congress, APC, in a hotly contested election for governorship in the southwestern state of Osun. Senator Ademola Adeleke, the uncle of Afrobeat star Davido, defeated the sitting governor, Mr. Adeboyega Oyetola. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, announced the final results early Sunday morning.
That Adeleke, Ademola, Jackson, Nuruddin, on behalf of the chairman of INEC, of PDP, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared the winner, and he is returned elected. Thank you very much.
I am Chido Numa. It is 4:30 p.m. in Abuja, Nigeria. Rudolph.
It is 5:30 p.m. in Khartoum, Sudan. Wherever in the world you are joining us, welcome to another episode of 90 Minutes. On our show today, go ahead.
On our show today is Nairobi-based award-winning cartoonist and content creator Gado, who is joining us to discuss the upcoming election in Kenya. The humorist and the brain behind XYZ Show and many others will help us understand what is at stake in Kenya and the impact on the rest of the continent. Gado, welcome to the show. But before we go to Gado, we have NLB, the Country Director of Action Aid and convener of the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, who is currently in Osun State, where she covered the election, to bring us up to speed on the latest development. And welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Gado, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chido and Rudolph, for having me.
All right, so let's start with you. And we know that INEC announced the winner early this morning. What's the situation like in Osun State?
Thank you very much for having me, and thanks for the question. The road, it has been a long road. You know, I've been here for about 10 days on behalf of the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, and I came in because we also had to put certain things in place before going into the elections. One of it included the governorship debate, where we had the 5 major political parties, their candidates, having to put them through a debate, getting them to know each other, also a process of starting a dialogue between all of them. And so we had all of that. And then on Tuesday last week, we had the stakeholders meeting with INEC, the traditional rulers, stakeholders, all the service chiefs together in Oshobo. That was done. And then we also had the peace accord by the National Peace Commission, you know, through the Kuka Center to sign peace accord with all the political parties. That also was a source of concern for me, because not all the political parties were present at the signing of that peace accord. So that was a worrying point for me. But from then, we had a briefing for observers by INEC. We also had, a visit to the DIG of police, who is the one covering the zone on elections. And so that was getting us ready for the election. And so in terms of security during the election, before the election, there were some skirmishes of gun shooting, and that was leading to a fear prior to the election. But in terms of security during the election, they actually took absolute control. We had a lot of interaction between the civil society and the government, the stakeholders and INEC itself, and we monitored the deployment of materials to the local government areas, and then to the racks, and then down to the polling units. And we deployed so many observers. We deployed observers to all the local government areas, and so they were there to start giving us the report from the morning of the election. In this election, unlike many other elections that we have had problems with logistics, election starts, the time for election to begin is 8:30 in the morning, but I can assure you that before 7 in the morning, majority of the polling units, all the INEC team and the security personnel had reached the polling unit. And so it's very exciting to get that covered. The deployment of security was really good. And so we commend the Nigerian security for that. And that is why I think interaction with the civil society is very, very important, because we want to hold them accountable, because certain things will happen. Nobody gets arrested. And then we have this deployment that is a drain on the resources of the country if we're not having results. So why are we spending that amount of money in deploying security? And so the meeting with the DIG, we also had the opportunity to meet with all the service chiefs, which was indeed great. So the logistics was covered, and then you had the security that was covered. One area that was a source of concern for us going into the election was the biometric verification and accreditation systems, BVAS. The machines were a source of concern coming from other elections, though in Ekiti, which was the election before this one, about a month ago, that election, was a flawless one in terms of security. Before the election, there were issues that were really scary, but during the election, it was a very, very peaceful election, and the resident electoral commissioner for Osun made a promise to us, because as is customary, before the elections, we get to have a meeting with the resident electoral commissioner to brief us on their preparedness, and he gave us his word. This particular election, they took their time in training, the ad hoc staff in terms of handling of the machines. And so I want to say that the BVAS, the performance is on a higher scale than what we had in Ekiti. And I think it's really exceptional now that if they are removing that, that is a plus for Nigeria. What we are seeing now is that voting and having to elect people is going back to the polling units. Power is now going to the people. We saw a lot, and one major issue that is still trailing is vote buying. The inducement of voters, happening on a large scale, and some of the security people are looking the other way when they are feeling, something is going on. What is happening now is that you cannot place your hand to say you can see somebody. In many places, you don't see people giving money, in the open, but you see somebody, because the Electoral Act says within the 300, meter radius, anything that is happening there, people can be arrested and so on. So people try to beat that by either bribing the people before or after the elections. And so, the placing of the cubicle and all of that also is another area where our observers notice that the placing of the cubicle, in some places allowed people to see what is going on, because it's like, show me your vote and then I pay you. It was a lot in Ekiti, but in Osun, they were being careful because we had multiple stakeholders at every polling unit. And so that is going on. I think I'm excited about the voting because it shows clearly that power is going back to the people, and the people will have to take responsibility. They must take responsibility about the quality of the governance that they get by being part of it and not being bribed. We are happy that at least it's a criminal offense to sell or buy a vote. So a few people were arrested. What we are following up with, we are going to follow up with the police force to ensure that we see that something is omitted, sanctions are given to those who were arrested. There's so many people who practice it. I have had conversations with people who said, no, they will come to this area. They have a number of the polling units, and so they give the money even before, the voting. But I think what is going on now is that the space is being tightened. The kind of cubicle we have now gives a bit of voter secrecy. There is a voting secrecy that is given, that is shown. But if you don't place it properly, if you deliberately, that's why we say there has to be a collaboration and a sort of partnership between INEC staff, the security people who are there, and monitoring them to ensure that things happen rightly. But I can assure you that power is going back to the people. You cannot do as usual because you are no longer snatching ballot boxes. If you snatch the beavers, it's not useful to any other police station. And so, and then the electronic system also is helpful. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Chido, we have about 4 more minutes with her. If you have any question for her, please.
Yes. So clearly, there weren't many incidents of violence, I would assume. But in your own assessment overall, would you say
isolation,
whether
reserve, intimacy with
INEC's preparation for the election, how would you score INEC and overall the mood of the people in the states?
I think I would say a big congratulations to the people of Osun State. There was morally, almost absolute peace. We had some little, maybe 1 or 2 spots, but it was a very, very peaceful election. Very, very peaceful. Few days to the election, nobody could have guaranteed, because there are some hot spots, there are some hot flashes, and the police told us that they were ready and that they knew the hot spots and they were going to deploy and adequately put that. So commendations to the people of Osun, commendations to the security, commendations to INEC. It's a better election than we have had. So I want to commend the commission for the preparedness was adequate. And so I think it's a tick box, but there are a few things. By the time we put our reports together, we do believe that there are ways of improvement, areas of improvement. One area we must work on is the civic education, because the people, need more knowledge on what the damage of vote buying is, and then on participating in governance. The attitude, we have to change our attitude. We have to be able to stand up right for Nigeria. Else we cannot pull the political party. They are not responsible. In terms of the winning, if you look at the margin, in 2018, this particular, the sitting governor defeated the person, the elected, the Adeleke now, defeated him by more than 400 votes. But at this time, people spoke loudly. He defeated him by more than 28,000, votes, which is but it was really keenly contested. What really happened? What happened is that votes counted.
Okay. We agree that the votes counted. My sense is that perhaps in terms of, I don't have the figures, but in terms of the numbers of registered voters vis-a-vis those who came out to vote, is it something encouraging, you would say? Is it up to 50% of voters? And if not, what could be responsible for that?
I think from the off-cycle elections that we have had so far, this will be the highest voter turnout. I think it got to almost, about 50% or more. I'm yet to get the tally in from our recording. I'm waiting for that record. We have more. In Ekiti was 36.7% or thereabout. Here now, I'm very sure that we're going to have more than 50% or maybe about that. One of the interventions that we had when we had the initial meeting with the resident electoral commissioner, as was customary, when he was making the promises, he told us that they had closed the ward level distribution of the permanent voters cards already. And what we got them to come out with was to plead with them and ask the commission, because the local government headquarters are so far away from people, to please redeploy people again back to the ward level. And they were able to redeploy, and they only stopped the distribution on Thursday evening before the election. And so we are happy that they did that, and I can see that some of those things can be associated with the voter turnout. The PVCs that were collected were about 1.5 million, 1.5 million, and more than 800,000 voted. So I think it's a fair deal.
All right, thank you very much, and we wish you good luck. But before you go, I don't know if Gado has any questions for you or comments.
Because it's connected. Gado, that's what happened in Nigeria yesterday, and it's a test of what we hope to see next year when we have our own presidential election. And I know you in Kenya, you are preparing for next month.
Yeah, I mean, interesting to listening to Ene. It's sort of like getting a report from Kenya in one way or the other. I mean, because they said I was keen to hear that the voter bribing allegations, because that happens everywhere. So I thought she's going to omit that particular report, but it is in a way interesting to hear that. So it is like we are not left behind here in Kenya too.
All right, and thank you so much for joining us. We'll continue next week to have conversation on what happened in Osun yesterday.
Okay, thank you so much, Gado. Thank you. It's nice to meet you online.
Thank you
so much, and keep safe and be well.
Thank you. Asante sana. Okay.
All right. Let's take a look at some of the things that our next guest Gado has been doing with his wonderful career.
Cause I'm in the mood. Me and my crew go deal with you personally. Personally.
Hii tablet na syrup hii syrup ya
dawa ya maji
jioni kabla ulale.
Naam.
And this, when you take this, they will make you fail to hear those noises that people make. Sasa watu wakipiga kelele makufuli, you don't hear any of that.
Hiyo ni la muhimu, manake kelele zimezidi.
And also remember to surround yourself with people who will not give you stress. Wale watu who have positive vibes.
Putting humor into very, very serious issues, but at the same time, getting a very, very major message across.
And this is mainly highlighting on the prayers yesterday. And, well, it's not rocket science who we have basically walking away. We have the president there wearing his crown. We also have the DP there holding a huge bag of who knows what that is. There's some stash. And they have said, just close your eyes and we pray. And of course, Wanjiko, as usual, is the victim right here.
Absolutely. This is Gado at his best. I think this is one of the best cartoonists of our time. And I do want to meet him one of my days.
All right. They are dreaming of meeting you in Kenya, but here we are. With Gado. Gado, welcome to the show. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you, Rudolph and Chido. It's nice to be here.
You've been on this for so long, you know, and you are well respected across Africa and the rest of the world. Now, election is coming up in Kenya. Can you tell us how things are going? I mean, this must be an exciting time for you.
Well, correction first. I mean, I'm you know, well respected and well disrespected because
it comes with the job, you know.
I know it comes with the territory. I mean, I'm in a business. After all, I'm in a business of respecting people.
Yeah, irritating people,
annoying people. Sure. So.
Imagine doing that for a living. I mean, it's not a very good career. But yeah, I mean, I think it's important probably to put the election, this year's election, in context. And we have an election in which the president backs the opposition candidate, and you have the Uhuru Kenyatta backing Raila Odinga, and then you have the deputy president who is actually the opposition within the government. So that is as bizarre as it gets. I mean, it is actually quite bizarre even for us, here. So that is actually what we are facing, with the two major candidates. It's also, important to note that, I mean, this year's elections has been re-energized by the entrance of the third horse, George Wajakoya, the candidate who has, excited the rest. And so he has, again, very bizarre proposals and ideas, which clearly has excited the supporters and many people, especially young people. I think you have all probably heard that he's actually, advocating, for the legalizing of marijuana and introducing death sentence and all that. And so that is also the context in which we are facing. But just to add to that, I think the reason for that is that because largely also you have quite a huge amount of population, the youth, who are disaffected. And I think Wajakoya has managed sort of to get hold of with his narrative of that group, and and has managed to excite that particular group. So that is also the context that we are looking at. I think there has been also quite a lot of talk about, are we going to have violence and all that. I personally don't think so. We might be having probably sporadic violence here and there, hopefully not, but I don't see that as having violence as probably in the past, and I think, thank God for that. We are all hoping for peaceful elections. We are again we hope for free, fair, transparent and credible elections. That job so far has been left to the IEBC, the electoral body here. I think IEBC has enjoyed fairly good public support, so to speak, if I may say so. But it is also important to add that there have been quite a number of questions that it is. There have been issues, for example, from the registration from the beginning of rather voter registration from the beginning of the exercise. You have heard recently, I think we've had a KPMG report on IBC, which has not been shared by the IBC. That is something that we the public and the media would want to see. And also recently that the elections material arrived in Nairobi, and IBC had no clue if they had arrived. I mean, some of these things are actually, they raise questions. But I believe, and we all hope that we will have free, credible, transparent, and elections this year. So I think I was just trying to give a little bit of a context there.
Yeah, for viewers. Yeah, very good. Now let me ask you, how does I'm curious about how governance is going on, why this is happening when you have a president supporting the opposition party candidate and then still have to work with his deputy who they still have to run the government. What's going on? How is that functioning well?
Again, yes, it's quite bizarre. I mean, I'm as a satirist. I mean, one of the things is as an editorial cartoonist. I mean, they basically, these people have made my job quite difficult. I mean, because the stuff that you would want to illustrate is just right there in your face. So how do you go and actually create ideas? I mean, so it is, and I suppose we have seen that happening. It hasn't been good for the president and for his deputy, and their supporters, simply because it doesn't augur well. I think so. We have seen, for example, the deputy president coming, and disowning all the bad things that they've gone wrong with the government, in which he was part of, and then taking credit for the good things so that have happened within the government. So it is bizarre. And then again, we have the opposition candidate you are supposed to police the
government
now, basically in bed with the government and actually supporting some of the very things that you all along has been rather fighting for. So it is actually something that we have been watching on a day-to-day basis, because you never know what you are going to have tomorrow, what kind of an outburst that is going to come out. The next day we have actually every day we have sort of like the president, something coming up. Last week we had the TP coming out, and last 2 weeks I think, claiming that he nearly slapped the president, and he said that was the figure of speech. We have the president coming back and actually saying, well, I would have actually turned the other cheek. So we have actually been treated to some, theater of some sort. I mean, theater of the absurd, if you are to say. And I think, and also it is important to add that the elections has lacked substance in terms of actually the details of what these candidates are going to do. They've actually, we've had a lot of politics, as we should, but I think one notable detail is that their campaigns have lacked details. They've offered a lot of stuff, they've said, I'm going to offer this, especially free stuff, but they are not telling us how they're going actually to exactly how we're going to pay for them. So and again, so that is also something that has been actually been the main feature of these elections.
Okay, Chido.
Okay. Yeah, so talking about the theater of the absurd that the elections have become, and I think it's a gold mine for you as an editorial cartoonist and satirist. How are Kenyans, the electorate, responding to all of this in terms of the numbers? How is it affecting the numbers? And then secondly, you talked about the disaffection within the youth population, which is something we're witnessing in Nigeria ahead of the election next year. What is responsible for that? Is it the bad leadership of the current government, or just the economy and the general feeling that the young people want to take charge of the process?
Yeah. So yes, I think it's important to point out. I think you talked about the numbers. I mean, the numbers. All the recent opinion polls that are quite apart and strange, and I think, in my view, the recent polls have been skewed and also a little bit unreliable, so to speak. And this is it points out to the reality of these elections, and as it has been in for many years for many elections in Kenya, it is also a very divisive election, and I think that speaks to what we are seeing. The numbers, I mean, I've said that the polls are skewed, and I think that is it tells, each side trying to influence, the polling bodies. We don't have a truly independent bodies, a national body that would actually give us, accurate numbers. So that is also unfortunate. In terms of the youth, yes, there has been actually there is a large number of youth that are disaffected and quite, so there has been actually, the issue of voter apathy. And again, as I said, what we have seen is that we have seen, the candidature of George Wajakoya, the third candidate, who actually, who dresses like a rock star, who has actually come out and actually offered quite an interesting, who has come with, interesting ideas that he has actually managed to excite a lot of young people. But I suspect part of that, because even him, I think, if you are to question his policies and what he's actually proposing, I mean, they are also quite dodgy, and they are not actually, they don't add up. But it shows, it shows you that what you have is, as you have a large section, particularly the youth or voters, who actually are tired of what the current political class, and they are willing to actually to go with a different candidate. I think that is also quite elaborate. It is seen. It is that the electorate, are sort of tired with the usual promises that are given, and they are actually willing to go with something new, even when they actually don't know what that new thing is.
Yeah, let me talk about George Wajakoya. He wants to legalize marijuana. He wants to export hyenas' testicles, and he wants to sell snake venom. I mean, I know that when I met you first time was at Sahara Reporters with Omoyele Sowore, and Sowore also wants to legalize marijuana. So it's mainstream. I don't think that is something that is weird. That the snake venom, that one, it may be expensive. I don't know, but as a humorist, when you look at these things, I think he's getting about 4% of the votes. I saw a poll saying that he's getting about 4% of the votes, and that will mean that he will have an impact on who will eventually win. He might tilt it to either of the. Don't you think so?
So that remains to be seen. Certainly, he has had an impact in terms of campaigning. Okay. So that remains to be seen if we can carry on with that momentum. Yes, as I said, I mean, he has, come up with, interesting ideas. But it is important also and very instructive to note that, the idea of legalizing marijuana, it's not as mainstream as probably in the West and other countries here in Kenya. And so I think the idea in itself is kind of new and very much enticing to many. Now, of course, it's not, to be fair to him, he says that he would want to export, and pay off the debt, but the details about that are very sketchy, and so that is the problem. He talks about selling off hyenas testicles. We are going to kill, I don't know how many thousands of hyenas. So what are you going to replace them with? Because, hyenas are part and parcel of the ecosystem that exists, so, how are you going actually to reproduce, hyenas? So that is actually something that is a continuous business. So I think he lacks details in his rhetoric, if you are to ask me. But as I said, is that he has actually managed to excite, especially young people, and also he's a populist. He's talking about, hanging, corrupt leaders. Now, Kenya has a constitution, and people have to be taken to court. But because there has been no political will in terms of fighting corruption, anybody who comes with an alternative view is welcomed, and so he has actually said that if I'm not correct, if I'm not wrong, I think he has suggested even to suspend certain aspects of the constitutions to get things done. Now that is scary stuff, but as I said, some of his policies, have not been interrogated properly, and I think he's pretty rather feisty character, and actually he's articulate, definitely, and he has accused also the media of not of sidelining him and so forth, but I think there is a need to interrogate his policies and his proposals now that actually he's gaining more support.
So, all right, talking about interrogating proposals and policies, I think there are 4 candidates. What's your assessment? We've talked about Raila Odinga, William Ruto, the current vice president. There is a 4th candidate.
There is, David, of course, Yokoya. There is also, now there are actually more than that. There is Paul Kagame, who is actually has been there right from the beginning. There is Mwaure, who actually has also.
Yeah, Maure. I mean, I'm talking about how many candidates have been cleared so far? You have about 3.
Actually, 4. You have. There are quite as many. I'm sure. I don't know if all of them have been cleared by the IEBC, but I think there were over 10 candidates, if I'm not mistaken, if not more actually than that. Okay. But of course, the current the race is actually, as we say here in Kenya, it's it's a 2-horse race, and of course you have now Wajakoya and the rest that are following.
Okay, so when you say it's a 2-horse race, that's between the current vice president and the leading opposition candidate.
Yeah.
How do they stack up in terms of acceptance and their views on critical? What are the main issues in this election for Kenyans? Security, economy, health. What exactly?
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, I mean, there are not so many differences in terms of actually what these candidates are offering. I think they are almost offering almost the same, offering a lot of, as I mentioned, free things. I think the DP, the deputy president, has initially was probably the first off the blocks and he has the hustler narrative with the hustler nation, and of course that has been very exciting for his base, and he has been very much that has attracted also lots of young people in the beginning, and of course with the promise of actually decentralizing the economy, and also sort of like giving further devolving the economy so that actually you reach the very bottom of the society. I think he has a slogan, bottom up, which is actually that's how you should build. But also, again, if you scrutinize it, I mean, that is not necessarily a very new idea. It is actually, it has been there. It lacks details. It is actually, very rich when it comes to rhetoric. If you are to look at, Raila Odinga and his campaign, not very much different. I think you have had him offering cash to poor families. How he's going to raise that cash, it remains to be seen. And I think also there has been actually offering incentives to women groups, widows, and single mothers. I mean, we have heard about this, every other elections. There is nothing new. There is nothing revolutionary about these candidates and what they are offering. None whatsoever, in my opinion. So that is also the challenge. For me, what I would have loved to hear is actually, for example, what are they going to do to fix, for example, the health system, which is actually should be the bedrock of any nation. How are they, how is going to fight corruption? That is something that they've been avoiding. One of the things that I think what we have heard from the Ruto campaign is to say, they are going to outsource fighting corruption. I mean, that was very interesting, saying that because fighting corruption has to be depoliticized. Fighting corruption is just fighting corruption. You just need the people who have stolen money. They are just known. They have just to be pursued. Kenya has a very watertight constitution, and so it is. I think it is a little bit. It's interesting, with that kind of approach. But again, it is actually rich on rhetoric in the sense that when you tell people that you are going to outsource fighting corruption, why should you outsource fighting corruption? If you are government, you should actually just jail people who actually are corrupt. And so, when it comes to integrity, for example, they all fall short. If you are to look also at Raila Odinga, and his campaign, there's nothing interesting or revolutionary in terms of fighting corruption. In fact, with Raila, it's even more. It is even more challenging because he's actually supported by the government that is seen to be very corrupt. They are the ones now backing his candidature. So you have actually nothing there. And then also when it comes to unemployment for that, I haven't seen any campaign that is offering actually a blueprint that is actually going to sort out really the unemployment problem in Kenya.
Sorry, Rudolph, before you come in, based on this, what you know, and if the elections were held today, how would you call it? And for who would you call it?
It's difficult to say. I mean, I don't think, again, in the absence of credible opinion polls, it's very difficult to say. I think it's a fairly tight race. If you are to look at, Ruto started, as I said, pretty much, off the blocks much earlier, and so he was, he had the earlier momentum, but recently, Raila, with the appointment of his running mate, who is very much as a woman, Martha Karua, who is very much respected. He has a good track record. That she has re-energized Raila's campaign, and it appears that she has they've gotten the momentum. And actually, you have now they've actually been very, very much energetic. They've been probably they turned the tide in many ways. So if you are to say again, as I mentioned, it's a tight race, and it's difficult, I think, again in the absence of actually credible opinion polls, probably to say who exactly is going to win. And it must be mentioned that actually we still have quite 3 weeks. That in politics is like 3 years. So it's still it's difficult to call.
Now let's talk about something that will interest Nigerians. One of them is that one of the candidates, Odinga, we saw where he was campaigning and he appeared to be sick. Is he sick? Because we have some sick candidates running for president in Nigeria, and we want to know how you guys are dealing with that over there. Then the other question is, he talked about corruption. We know that Ruto is quote unquote said to be very corrupt. I don't know how that is playing with Kenyan voters. So do they just think that everybody is corrupt, so it's not important? And for we know that Ruto also gave out his daughter in marriage to a Nigerian. So so that's also something of interest to Nigerians. And hopefully, hope that Dr. Damages will be there in Kenya during the election. And we want to find out, because there's always that conflict between other Africans in Kenya and Kenyans and in the relationship. Tell me a little bit about this.
Well, so you guys are literally in-laws to the
yeah,
DP.
we have in-laws with William. So
I think you should move. I think you should move your show to Nairobi.
We are coming,
you will do very well.
We are coming to Nairobi because we have an in-law there. We have interest. But the corruption issue, and also the sick candidates. How is that playing? Is Odinga sick? Really? Is this?
Okay, so not that we know. I mean, look, the Raila is 77 years old, and so he's old. But there are no reports that we know he's sick. I mean, I don't think that that would have been a public news. He's old, yes. I mean, he's not the same candidate, that he was, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. That one is I think you can see it. But he has been campaigning. I think yes, you can see he's tired, but sick, not that I know. And he has been a tireless campaigner. I mean, he has been seen in as many rallies. So I think that is something that, and I also don't think that actually the public has lashed into that in terms of actually making that as a political issue. So I think that is my view. I mean, I could be wrong, but that is something that if he was sick, I think that would have been known. In terms of actually Ruto and corruption, I think that's a public knowledge that yes, he has been accused, and he has been involved in as many scandals as you can guess. I mean, the public record is there. I mean, but it's important to know that actually Chapter 6, here in Kenya, which is actually a constitution provisions that actually requires the integrity of candidates in elections and in public office, I think has been trashed, and I think that is actually, it goes way 10 years ago. So you have a situation where really the integrity is not an issue on this election, sadly enough. And if you were to look at, for example, even governor, gubernatorial races and MPs, senators, we have actually quite. There are very few credible candidates. I mean, that one you can go to the bank with. The reality is, if actually today you are to really scrutinize our leaders, probably you have a handful of them who actually would pass the integrity test. So that's also a fact. We had recently actually a case here whereby a president, a governor's candidate for Nairobi, was actually, questioned about his degree certificate, and it was, decided in court. Now he won the court; he was allowed to contest. But it is also public knowledge that we have quite a number of candidates that have forged their candidature. I mean, including actually, so you have actually that quite a, very, very questionable when it's we have as many candidates that are quite questionable when it comes to the integrity test. I mean, so it is sad. I must add, it is very sad because we have a provision that can guard against that. And it we should have actually many of these candidates on the ballot, but unfortunately they are there, and we will have actually to deal with.
Yeah, we can relate very well in Nigeria.
I know, and I must add, actually, your presidential candidate Tinubu is also actually his certificate is also questionable, and he has never ever produced it. Actually,
listen, where the primary school and secondary school certificates, he could not remember the name of the school or the year or his classmates. There's no record of anything like that.
I thought he went to college in Chicago or something.
Yeah, Chicago, and that depends on what he said.
No, but it should be easy for you.
We actually found that one. We found that one. But it's different from what he said when he was running for governor, where he said University of Chicago, not Chicago State University.
So we are catching up. We are catching
up. You guys are catching up. It's very interesting. We are
all right. So, talking about catching up with us, there are a few things we can learn from the Kenyan people, the democracy in Kenya. And that's one of the reasons why we brought you on the show today. Before the show started, my co-host and I were talking about the possibility of changing the Kenyan constitution for Uhuru Kenyatta to run for a third term. One of the many questions we'll ask in this regard is, was that ever an issue in Kenya? Was that ever mooted? Did you have some, how would I call it, some people just flying the kite of a possible change to the constitution for the current president to run for a third term? We've seen it in your neighbors. In Kagame is doing it in Rwanda, and the man in Uganda has been there for almost 40 years. Was that an issue as far as Kenyans are concerned? And I'm looking at this in context of how you managed, if it was an issue, how you managed to deal with it as a lesson for other Africans.
Oh, okay. So that was an interesting, that is an interesting question. In Kenya, I think what happened is that that would have been difficult. But what happened in Kenya is that we had a movement that tried to change the constitution. And the idea, as many, it is believed that, the idea was probably to allow the position of a prime minister to be sort of like carved in the new document that was being proposed, and so that to allow probably Kenyatta to come in as a prime minister in the whatever next this political dispensation. But I think that movement was defeated. It was what was there was a document that a few last year, I think, no, the beginning of this year, probably if my memory serves me right, that was it ended there. So I don't think it is possible for Kenya today for somebody to change that, in the constitution. But yes, if you are to look at our neighbors, the Kenyans' neighbors, that there is always that possibility. Where I come from in Tanzania, the president can actually do that, and it's just require a change of. I mean, there's a possibility to change that to change the current law to allow for that. I've always felt that Kenya, in Kenya, the Kenyans elections are important, but also whether elections everywhere are important, but it's very pivotal to look at Kenya in that context, that it serves also as an example in many ways, with all its faults and issues, that there are certain things that for now cannot happen. I mean, the idea of the president probably running for a third time cannot happen. We have seen that actually has been defended vigorously by the constitution, but also the civil society, and also the other quarters. And so and I think one also has to look at that broadly, in the sense that it also took Kenya many years, and also some blood to reach there, in terms of actually having the current constitution, which in many ways, despite its issues here and there, has so far served this country fairly well. I mean, and you have to understand that there has been actually, the political class has tried to fight this constitution, but they have failed. They have really tried to change a lot of things. They've actually not even tried to implement quite a number of provisions in the constitution, like the 2/3 gender rule, and so forth and so forth. So in that context, I think it's important, because in many ways, other countries are also looking at Kenya as a fairly, when it comes to constitutionalism, as a probably a north in many ways. Again, with all its challenges, you still have actually quite a lot of positives as far as the current constitution is concerned.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Rudolph, just quickly on that point, and that's the point I was trying to make, the struggle Kenyans have had to put up with to arrive at this point. Then there is also the issue of election date, as it happens in the US. Your election is the second Tuesday of August every 5 years, or election year, and you've managed to sustain that over time. We were talking about this, and I said after the serious political crisis Kenyans went through many years ago, they came to the agreement that they needed to fix the country in terms of power sharing and all that, and they enshrined that in the constitution. Is there a sense, from your own experience, that African countries would have to get to that tipping point before they can then decide to pull back and create a workable or sustainable democratic process for their countries?
It's a question that I've always asked myself. I don't believe in one size fits all solution. I think African countries have very different histories and different backgrounds and different pasts, and so I mean, whereas yes, Kenya offers a good example, it's also important to recognize the history that Kenya has walked through. I don't believe that we should shed blood so that to get political gains. I think to a large extent that is the history of humanity, But I don't believe that should be the case. I think other countries that they have seen that they have the opportunity to actually to take advantage of that. I mean, case in point, I think in Tanzania, here in East Africa, I mean, in Tanzania we have now the debate about a new constitution. I think it is fair, and we have had quite some positive reaction from the government. It is just fair to take advantage of the situation and actually, for example, move ahead with the movement and actually start discussing about the new constitution. It doesn't need to have actually a few people, or rather a few or a number of people murdered, so that actually for the government and the opposition to sit down and chat, a new path. It is actually clearly a lot of African countries, basically inherited their constitutions from their colonial masters. They have outdated constitutions. It is only fair if actually they sit down with their political opponents and actually chart a way forward. I don't think that requires, as I mentioned, that people to shed blood so that to come to that agreement.
All right, we are going to let our viewers also join us in this conversation. So I've posted the link for people who may want to ask you questions. Well, let me mention some things. Some of them are already on the questions that people are posting on the comments. The first one is this: ethnic issues in Kenya. As it appears as if Kenya is managing it well. I know that the two deputy president candidates are Kikuyus, while the two leading candidates are not. And I wanted to maybe say something about that, how that is playing out. Also, there's this picture that I saw, I couldn't find it now to show it to people, where Jomo Kenyatta was with Arap Moi and Kibaki and his son Uhuru. In one picture, you have all the presidents of Kenya. And whoever wins this election will be the first president that won't be in that picture. Is there any sense that this will be a transition, that it will be a new? I know that Odinga's father was also very active, the first with the first president of Kenya. So, but is there any sense that the Kenya is moving to a different direction, to a new generation, so to say, or the elites or the families that control things?
No. You don't need to apologize. You're actually using all the right words. I mean, so to speak. I don't think there will be any a transition to a new whether to use your words, to something new. Really, I mean, if you were to look at all the candidates, these in Kenya, we have a word, dynasties, as we call them. I know Ruto fashions himself as a hustler, but that is far from the truth. But also we can that's a debate for another day. But if you are to look at all the political, the two main candidates, these are political elites, through and through. These are and so I don't expect it, in terms of actually changes in that area. I mean, they come, all of them, and come from. I mean, Ruto, yes, he's actually he comes from a different background, but this is the person who served Moi. This is the person who served Kibaki. So, in that regard, he's actually part and parcel of actually these dynasties. Raila Odinga has been in the opposition most of his life, but actually he comes from a very political family. So, unfortunately, I don't see. Any outsiders, that would come to upset that, and also that would cause probably something of a revolution, in the political space, so to speak.
All right. One last question before we get people in. there's a question about there's something that happened in Kenya. It's about a year ago. I don't know if it played in the Kenyan media. The kidnapping and arrest of Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the Biafran movement in Nigeria, and he was brought back to Nigeria, and it continues to be on trial. So I want to know, did the Kenyan people know that this happened? And how did they see the role of the government, their government, played in that? It's something that is of interest to so many people who are commenting.
Yeah, indeed, this actually has been. I know of the issue, but also it's important to say that this was kept quite quiet. It is actually an issue in which the media has kept quiet about it. Very little has been said. Very little has been actually articulated, and so unfortunately, that's the reality about that particular issue. Sadly, we haven't been able actually to know exactly what happened, what is the the background story and all that, and so forth and so forth. But it shows you also, I think, one of the interesting, for me, the takeaways is that the coercion that are there within African governments, and so you need actually with these kind of issues, you need strong civil society that can raise some of these issues. You need actually an independent media that can actually very much raise this kind of issues. And it is actually, again, very instructive to note that actually one of the feature when it comes to these elections is also, it is actually the media, civil society, and the church that is equally divided. That actually, in my view, all these institutions have abdicated their roles and they become part and parcel of the political divisions, instead of actually playing their role as watchful, independent institutions to question the candidate, to question the government, to question the opposition about their plans, about the elections. So you have actually, I think this is a very important point, which is also not very much discussed, in these current elections, that, if you are to look back at all the elections that, especially starting with the 2002 elections, that you also had quite fairly independent media. You had also very strong church and rather religious leaders that spoke strongly about the candidates and so forth. And actually they were very steadfast when it comes to, election issues. You had a very strong civil society that actually, carried the light in terms of questioning the government and sticking to the issues. With these current elections, it is a bit difficult because you also have a civil society that is, as I mentioned, very much divided. You have a civil society that is actually devoid of, clout and leadership. So it has made matters worse for the electorate. To be fair. You have the church that is has sometimes remained silent at best, and at worst they've been actually supporters of this candidate and that candidate, and I don't think that should be the case. And I think that is actually quite important point that it has been a huge feature of these elections, and it is not actually discussed.
All right.
Okay. So, sorry, Dudo, before we bring in the audience, just to ask, to find out if there is any kind of foreign influence, whether in terms of finance or persons, whether both within Africa and outside, your neighbors, what kind of interest do they have in who emerges? Because Kenya is a big player in East Africa, and I'm sure between Uganda and Rwanda, there is that interplay of the fight or struggle for supremacy, both locally within East Africa, around the African continent, and outside. is there any kind of influence that people are bringing to bear on the outcome of the Kenyan election?
I hope I got your question right. I mean, one of the things that probably is expected of these elections from the around the the region is the fact that I think people, leaders, and many quarters are expecting hope that we are going to have free, fair, credible and transparent elections. I think that is the wish of a majority, of the neighbors, and I think broadly speaking also in Africa. Also, I think if there is anything that also is expected is that we are going to have rather elections that are not violent. I think that's very important, and so for me, if actually we have those issues then resolved, I think it will be a success for the region, and that will be actually a huge win for the region, because also Kenya as an anchor state here, as a a country with huge political influence in the region, that also, if you are going to have, for example, violence, then that is also going to affect the other countries in many ways, as we saw in 2008 when actually that happened. That can affect transportation of goods to other countries, and so forth and so forth. So it's important that actually that is sorted out. Recently here you had DRC that joined the region as a bloc, as a country. It has joined the regional bloc, East African community. That has added a huge economic incentive to the region. So I suppose people, leaders, and different quarters would love to see that elections that are free, fair, and transparent, credible, and devoid of violence.
All right, so let's bring in some of our viewers who are here. Raf, welcome to the show. So you have any question or comment for Gado, editorial, cartoonist, and content creator from Nairobi, Kenya?
Yeah, thank you for having me, as always. Greetings, Gado. 2 quick questions for you. Did you always plan? Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry, I forgot to switch off my phone. I was watching on YouTube on my phone. Okay. Did you always plan to be in this field of journalism? Was this always your dream? And number 2, you earlier you had talked about most of the candidates bringing lacking like revolutionary ideas, and why is it that we are always looking for, and I'm not criticizing you on that, but I'm just asking, why is it that we are always, is it that are we putting too much hope on brand new ideas when there's nothing wrong with borrowing ideas that already work from other places? Like, we don't always need something brand new. Sometimes we can use what works, and you can get from the past. Like, I'm a believer in, you don't need something new, because I believe that's why we have so many populists out there today, because they're always trying to claim that they're bringing something new, but they're not really bringing anything new to the table, but it sounds new. So isn't it in a way dangerous to be saying that, I don't want to say claiming, but to be saying that we should be expecting brand new ideas from our political office seekers? So thank you.
Oh, okay. So I will go backward? I mean, actually, that's a very good question, by the way, Ralph, I must say. Yes, I agree with you. I think, we shouldn't always be expecting something new. I think when I say I use the word revolution, I meant that something that will actually probably cast away what the current the currency that exists at the moment. So I am a believer, and I totally agree with you that yes, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of ideas, systems that we can borrow. In fact, I will go further and say I'm not even a believer of messianic ideology, whereby it is a must that we must have somebody from somewhere who actually will rescue us from our misery. I think in my view, I stand to be corrected, is that the answers are more complicated than that, but they also lie in systems, for example, I think once you have a good constitution, that is one block that you can actually depend on. But that on its own, as we have seen here in Kenya, is not actually the answer. You also need political leadership that actually would also build on that. And so it is probably goes hand in hand in terms of actually what should be done to get the desired results, and to get to Africa and many African countries where we want to be. So I agree with you. It's a more complicated than just actually having leaders who can cause this and that. And also it is actually more complicated than just having, good system. You need institutions, for example, that is very important. You need a very working judiciary, so that actually even when you have even a good constitution, actually you can take these crooks, to jail, and actually the courts can deal with them. You need actually, a good education. You need institutions that can guide us when it comes to that. You need actually a good healthcare system. And so it is actually a combination of so many things. But I think it is actually also, it takes, blocks by blocks also to realize that. On your first question, I think, well, not exactly. I mean, I think I would, initially, I somehow thought I will end up doing it, but I didn't know, I think in the beginning, I would do that as a profession. I mean, I knew that I would be some sort of, I might, whatever I am, I think, whether an engineer or an architect, I would somehow be able to do or, deal with that. But, as I grew older, I think I somehow leaned towards, being, I'm actually a media practitioner and an editorial cartoonist. I also went to study animation and films, and I'm a content producer. And so it's also, I combine all those skills, to do what I do.
All right. Thank you, Ralph. There's a question here from Alaro. He is also in the studio, but I don't think I can see him. So, but he wants to know if the choice of Martha as VP is something exciting for the youths in Kenya. I don't know if you can talk about that.
Yes, I think it has been exciting to the. Especially to women and to the youth. There is no doubt that Martha has a very good record. He was in the opposition, and then he was in the Mwai Kibaki's government. He's not seen to be corrupt. I mean, at least there are no skeletons that are known about him that you can point out and say, oh, he stole this, he was involved in this scandal. That one is largely known, and so he's seen as a not only a fair candidate, but also as a very good candidate. He's also known to be a no-nonsense person. I mean, he's very the ministry that he has led before have been fairly performing during his during her time. So one could say that in itself, it is very promising, but also that is also very it has energized the Odinga's campaign. There's no doubt about that, and I think that is also not very common. I mean, in many African countries, to rise to that position and without having all these skeletons by your in your cardboard.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chido.
Okay. Yeah, just to follow up on that point, the Kenyan constitution makes provision for about 47 positions for women in the National Assembly. What role are we in seeing Kenyan women play in the election coming up next month?
Okay, Gado, don't answer yet. Let's get the question from Wonders, if he could turn his camera the other way. And also, one thing that bothers me or concerns me when I look at the constitution in Kenya, I don't even know how it's done. When they reserve these positions, how do they make sure that it's occupied by women? Do they say that in this province or in this locality, it's only women that? How is it implemented? You can take the questions while we wait for Wonders to figure out.
Yes. So number one, I think it is important to know that actually the number of women contesting for positions in Kenya has been rising, with every election. Kenya is a very patriarchal society, and so that is in itself is commendable. We have today as many women, competing. Yes, I think the position of women rep is I think if you are referring to that is a women's position, but also there is also still I mentioned earlier, a 2/3 gender rule in the constitution in which that has not been implemented. That is also something that is a blot to this outgoing government. I hope the incoming government will deal with that. And so, but it is also important to note that I think one of the things that I, as an individual, have also been, because in my role as an editorial satirist, I have attacked, both women and men in equal measure. And so I've also sometimes been accused of so many things by feminists. And that I actually have been unfairly attacking women. But I have been an equal opportunity satirist. So I have, what I would want to see are actually good candidates like Martha, on the ballot. What we have seen so far is also very crooked, women leaders, and that has been, a problem I have. And once you attack them, sometimes once you actually, you question them, they say, oh, you are actually, you are gender biased. You are not actually respecting women. Recently, there have been reports to as many women who actually top women leaders who actually as just bad as male, candidates, and they are as crooked as they get. So this also should not be allowed to vie for any position simply because they are women. I think we should also focus on who elected, or who are actually which women are also going to vie for these positions. I mean, I think that one is always lost. And we end up actually, accepting also women because just they're women. I think that is also has been a big problem, in these recent years.
All right, thank you. Wonders, what question do you have? You have to mute yourself, please. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dr. Damages, and thank you. All right.
Shido or Gado.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Damages, and I'm very happy to be on the show. All right. Okay. Oh, the voice is coming back to me. I don't know.
Because you have more than two platforms open. But go ahead with your question. That's okay. We can hear you well. Go ahead with your question.
Oh, I can barely hear you.
Go ahead with your question.
We can hear you.
All right. Okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. All right. I have a question for our Kenyan brother.
All right, Wonders is having problems. So let me go back to Laro. I think you are here now. You have any further?
Yes. Based on the matter Karua's question that I asked, the second phase to the question is she being used as a poster child, or does she really have a voice on the ticket? That's number one. And the way I see the Kenyan politics is like a combination of APC and PDP in Nigeria, which is a lot of promises, magic without plans. If I can say that, you can further enlighten us on that. And I'm going to step out of the studio because I'll be on the road listening while you answer.
Can you repeat your second question, please, Wanda?
My second question is a comment based on the situation in Nigeria, APC, PDP. They promise a lot of miracles without a plan on how to actually achieve it. So that's basically and I hope, if you follow our Nigerian politics in the next coming year, we can separate ourselves from this situation in Africa. Thank you very much, my brother. And also, your cartoon reminds me of Genesis, Land of Confusion. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you, Alaro.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So just by the way, I do follow Nigerian politics very well. I mean, I normally follow African politics. It's part of my job, and so I always do that. And also, I'm having visited Nigeria many times. I enjoy my stay there. So I got hooked by, as bizarre as it sounds, as bizarre as Nigerian politics is. I've always enjoyed it. I think it's more bizarre than Kenyan ones in many respects, and so I always enjoy that. Having said that, I think no, I think Martha is nobody's poster child or poster girl, and she's her own person. I think that we have seen her throughout her career. She won't actually take that from anybody. I mean, to be fair to her. And interestingly enough, by the way, I mean, I also had run-ins with her. I mean, she once actually, when she was a Ministry for Justice, I think she did actually threaten me and warned me, by the way, because of my drawings. And she was very feisty and very she wasn't very happy with some of my horrible drawings. But I think a lot has changed since then. She did run for an elections. She was a presidential candidate some years ago, also, in her own right. But to be fair to her, she's actually a very strong candidate. And I think, as I mentioned, if there is anything that has energized Odinga's campaign, it's Martha Karua.
Very good. Wonders, can you hear us? We have about 2 minutes left. Can you speak, and let's see if you can get your question in. Wonders, unmute yourself, please, and speak. Go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, Dr. Damages, and good evening, every other person there.
Yeah, just ask your question. We don't have time. We have.
Okay. What I want to ask is regarding the Kenyan election. Because my wife is from Kenya, I'm a Nigerian. So I'm much interested with what's happening there because of the family extension and stuff.
Where do you live? So, are you in Nigeria? Are you in outside?
No, I'm outside Nigeria.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So
right.
I want to ask, the situation in Kenya between the government, the President Kenyatta and Ruto is quite difficult. We haven't seen anything like that elsewhere. I mean, in Africa or beyond, where the president is against the deputy, or the deputy is against the president. And how do they manage to cope? I mean, if I bring it home in Nigeria, or I take it home in Nigeria, I know it will be a war. How do they cope? I mean, it's confusing. It's really difficult.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think I started earlier. You know, when in my opening that you know, I gave the context of a president who's supporting an opposition candidate, and you know, then you have a deputy president who's an opposition within the government. So it is what it is, and that's what we are dealing with. It is very bizarre for us, and we so far so good in terms of like that we have been treated to a very public theater of absurd, whereby the president comes out to say this, and the deputy president comes to accuse the president. You have the president who actually, the deputy president who actually comes out to claim the good things the government has done, and at the same time trash out the bad things that you know, of the government that he was very, you know, he's part of. So it is interesting. It has never happened here before, and so we are kind of also, we are in your position, that we are learning how to deal with it, to understand it. So far, I think you know, it has not. Blood has not been spilled, so I would like to think that you know, it will all end well, and
sorry,
don't you think that
don't you think that might bring another repeat of 2007 turmoil?
I don't think so. I think, okay, all the indications are that probably we will have peaceful elections. I don't think that that will reach there. I mean, there were people who have suggested that, but I tend to differ. One is also you have to understand that the ICC has set precedent, in the sense that now you have a situation where you know, all the other political players have to think twice to get themselves involved in promoting violence, or in sort of like advocating for such actions. So I don't see it in that sense, because that ICC sort of like you know, it is always hovering, you know, around all these candidates. But also the one would also say that the elements that probably were necessary to make the 2008 rather 2007 near civil war are not there, you know, anymore. I mean, that's a discussion for another day, but I don't see that, you know. And I think also it is important to say that, you know, the new constitution that was obtained in 2010 has played a major role in that, because that was a huge gain, and it has actually also sort of like it has acted as a buffer to many things. And so I would again would like to think that you know, that's not what's going to happen.
All right.
Chido,
go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gado. We are out of time. I feel vindicated when you mentioned the word near civil war, because we had that conversation pre the show, and I used the same words, and my co-host was almost going to lynch me. Anyway, it's been wonderful having you on the show. We hope we'll bring you back after the elections. Thank you all for being part of today's show. Those who could make it to the studio, and those watching us on Facebook, YouTube, and other social media platforms. We look forward to another episode of the show. Follow us on our different platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, on Dr. Damages and 90 Minutes Africa. So long, gentlemen and ladies.
All right. Thank you so much,
Chido. Thank you, Rudolph, and see you again.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
And